Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make these leopard print beaded Kumihimo bracelets, and these are the two that I made here. So I have two versions. It's the exact same pattern, but I wanted to make one that was kind of with regular colours as it would be in real life, and then I also really wanted to make one it was more like a snow leopard, so I have these two here. It could also be really fun to make them in other colours, I think. So say use purple tones or blue tones, so I would still use the black colour to outline the spots, and then say a medium to darker purple or blue inside the spot, and then a lighter version of that colour as the background colour. I think that could be really fun as well. So there's lots of opportunity for what you can do with this. Like I said, these are both the same pattern. Now as for the size of these, it's hard for me to give you a precise size because the size of your braid also depends on what tension you work with in your braid. As you can see here, these two aren't even the exact same length. It's the exact same pattern that I've used, but they are just slightly different because this one I used a slightly looser tension in the braid than I did with this one. So this was tighter and therefore became a bit shorter. So all I can say is an approximate length here. So this braid ends up being roughly about 6.5 and a bit inches in length, the braid itself. That's why though I also, when I make my Kumihimo braids here, I prefer to use a clasp with an extender chain because then it's more variable what size you can use it for. So these are the braids here, and the bracelets. So if you want to learn how to make these, then keep watching. So it's then these materials here that we're going to need. Now first of all, I have a round Kumihimo disc because I'm making a round braid here, and then for that I'm going to be using a 0.4mm S-lon for the cord. Now this is nice and strong, and also I'm using a black colour just to have a nice neutral background colour for the different colours of the beads. And then as for the beads, these are then the three colours that I'm using here. They're all 8-0 Miyuki seed beads, and then first of all here I have an opaque black, and then I have a silverline gold AB, and then a silverline topaz. So these are just the colours that I'm working with here to get a bit more of a natural coloured look to the braid. But you can always use whatever colour combination that you want to, so you can make some really interesting designs with that. And then I have my Kumihimo ends that I'm going to finish off the braid with, to then be able to use my extender chain, my lotto claw clasp, and then with the jump rings there to make a nice finish of the bracelet. So let's get it all together and let's get started. So then as for the lengths of cord that we'll need, I have here 6 lengths of about 1 meter each, and these are going to be used for the braid. And what I'm going to do is make sure all the ends are together, and then I'm going to fold them over in half like this. So I find roughly where the middle is. I'm going to tie a regular knot, and then I've just attached a piece of scrap wire here just to help pull it down through the braid. You can also use a Kumihimo weight or something, but then these are going to get doubled over and turn into 12 working lengths for the disc. So then I've taken all my lengths of cord here and then put it onto my disc, and I've taken that knot with the wire, put it down through the center of that hole in the middle there. Then I distributed all my cords around the disc like this. So I'm not following the numbers or anything on this one. What I've done is I've just kind of distributed them fairly evenly as I can. So I've just taken 2 cords around the top dot there, 1 on each side, and then 2 around the bottom dot, again 1 on each side, and then I've just placed them in pairs around pretty evenly there. So as you can see, 2 on each side in between the 2 middle ones there. And then what we need to do first of all is start the braid off here, making a little section of the braid with just the cord before we start adding in any beads. So we're just going to start as if it's a regular 8-strand braid, we just have a few more lengths. So what that is, I'm just going to then take my top left one, release that from the disc, bring it down, stay on the left side of the bottom pair here. So we're always working with pairs that are opposite each other. Then I'm going to take the bottom right one, bring that up and stay on the right side. Then I'm going to turn my disc this direction here to the very next pair that I run into, again two that are straight opposite each other here. I'm going to take my top left one, bring that down, stay on the left side, and then the bottom right one up to the top and then stay on the right side. Again, then I turn my disc till I run in to the very next pair, and make sure you turn the disc in this direction throughout the whole braid. Again, for this next pair, take the top left one, bring it down, and then the bottom right one and bring that up. And then turn it for the very next pair, and you can see gradually your cords are kind of travelling around the disc here. So you want to keep doing this always turning your disc in the same direction as this throughout the braid until you reach the very next pair that you're due to then take, until you have about 1 to 2 centimeters of braid. So now, as you can see here on the back, I have my little section of braid, and then we're at this point. So what we need to do now is start adding in our beads onto the lengths of cords so we can then start incorporating them into the braid itself. So this is then how you want to set up the beads here to achieve the pattern of the leopard print. Now I'm not going to go through it in detail in this video because that will be quite a bit to go through, as you can see, because there isn't an actual repeated pattern to this, so it looks more random. So what I've done instead is taken a picture of this setup, and then I'm going to put a link to where I put that on my website down in the description box below. So if you need to have a closer look here, which might be helpful, it's going to be both a picture and also a written text description of the setup, then you can go there and have a look if you need to. And then what I also just want to mention is that this bead setup here is to accommodate for the way that I work with my braid. So like I showed you here, making that little section with just the cord, I take my top left one, bring that down, and then I take the bottom right one and bring that up. So this is how you want to add the beads if you work in that way to achieve that same pattern that we're going to end up with. So now that we then have all the beads on the cords here, we then need to start adding them into the braid. But then once you have all your beads on here in the right order, then we need to start adding them into the braid while continue making the braid here in the same way. So like I said, I'm going to take my top left one first of all, and then as I'm releasing the cord from my disc, I'm also going to grab the very first bead that I run into, let that drop all the way down here, all the way into the middle. Now this is the same basic principle as a regular beaded Kumihimo braid. You need to make sure that the bead goes right into the middle underneath all the cords in the middle as well. So if it doesn't drop in by itself, make sure to tuck it in with your finger so it stays underneath the cords that are crossing over, and then bring it down. And then I'm going to take my bottom right one, release, drop down my first bead as I'm releasing the cord as well, and then make sure the bead stays below the cords in the middle. This is to make sure the beads end up on the outside of the braid to achieve this pattern that we want. Whereas if you don't make sure they stay below the cords, they end up on the inside of the braid. And that's also a nice technique, but it's not what we want for this one. Bring that up, and then we turn the disc in this direction here to the next pair. So just like this. So in the same direction as I was going before when I was making the first section with just the cord, the exact same thing. So we are doing the exact same thing as that. The only difference is now every time we move a cord on the disc, we also drop down one bead. So again, I take my top left one, let the bead drop down into the middle, make sure it's tucked in, and then go to the bottom of that, and then take my bottom right one, release a bead as I'm releasing the cord, let that drop down, and then tuck it into the top slot there on the disc, and then turn your disc to the next pair. And then you want to keep going like this. Now you will find with an 12-strand braid and adding the beads in, it's slightly different than doing it with an 8-strand braid. So what I'm going to do is continue for a bit here, just do a bit more braid just to get past the beginning point, and then once we get into it properly, just kind of show you the way to do it a bit differently than the 8-strand braid. So now that I got a little bit further on here, I can show you what I meant, that it's just a little bit different. The principle is the same, but the way it actually works is a bit different than an 8-strand braid. So I'm due to take my next one here, so I'm releasing my cord and at the same time letting the bead drop down, and then obviously, like I said, make sure it goes underneath all the cords. But what you want to make sure to do is you don't want to just bring it over like this, because you're going to end up with a very loose and kind of wonky braid. Because what you actually need to do, it's going to be easy to see on your own as well, is I'm going to let the bead drop down, but what you'll find is the cord, the same cord that I'm using now, but the part of it that's right below the bead, you actually need to pull that a little bit and tuck that in between the two beads below the current one that we're placing into the braid, but that's already in the braid. So basically we're pulling this cord into the braid and then at the same time dropping the bead down, making sure it stays underneath the cords that are crossing over there in the middle. So make sure whatever you do still that the beads are staying underneath the cord in the middle to make sure they end up on the outside. The same thing on the other side here. Release the cord, let the bead drop down, and then what I like to do most of the time, because you'll actually be able to feel it as well, you'll be able to kind of feel a little click almost. It's just a gentle tug. You don't have to pull hard, just a gentle tug so the cord gets in between the beads that are underneath the current one that we're adding in. So it gets right into the braid instead of the cord ending up also kind of on the outside of the braid. And then again making sure that the bead stays underneath the cords. So just that little tug. Like I said, not pulling on it because obviously you might affect the tension of the braid too much. But just a little tug when you're dropping down the bead, just like that. And you can see the bead just moves right in there along with the cord, and you'll also be able to feel it as you're doing it. It's a little bit of a tug. You'll be able to feel almost like a little click in the cord as it's moving into the braid. And again, just like that, and then you just keep going like that. So it's just what I wanted to mention to make sure of using this 12-strand braid with beads on it. You just have to make sure that every bead that you pull over with the cord, you just kind of give that little tug to just click it into place before you then move on to achieve a nice and even effect throughout the whole braid. So just keep doing this until you used up all the beads, and then I'll show you what to do next. So now, as you can see, I've reached the point where I've used all my beads on all the lengths of cord here, and I've also then achieved my braid with the pattern on. So now what we need to do is make this little section of braid on this end, the same as we did on the other end right at the beginning, just to have something to finish off the braid with. So you just want to continue with your braid, just using the cord again. So just keep doing the same thing, now just without adding in any beads. For another about 1 to 2 centimeters, just like right at the beginning. So now that I've then made that little section of braid here, we now have the actual braid itself ready and done. So what we need to do now is take it off the disc, and to do that securely without the braid here coming undone too quickly, what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to do the last pair that I just used here. I'm going to take one of the other ones, and then I'm going to take cords that are right opposite each other, so one from each side there. I'm going to take these two and then bring them across the middle and tie a regular knot with the two over the middle, and then tighten that down right at the end of the braid, and then just put them to the side. Take the other two from the same pair, one from each side there, right across from each other, and then bring them across the middle and tie a knot. And this knot is also at the end of the braid, but it's sitting right next to the other one, so these two knots are sitting right next to each other. So like that, and tighten them nicely there so they're not going to come undone. And then I'm going to go to the next pair, do the same thing. Take the ones that are right opposite each other, tie a knot across the middle, and then take the other two and then tie a knot. And again, this knot is also going to be right next to the other one. And we're just we're finishing off the cord, you could say, a bit more securely, so it shouldn't be coming undone while just taking it off the disc. But also we're not adding too much bulk, because what you could also do is take off all the cords here from the disc and then just tie a knot with all of them together. That's fine, and then you can cut that off when you then attach your Kumihimo ends. But I prefer to do this because this doesn't add very much bulk to the end of the braid. And the same with the last ones there. Now obviously you don't want to be leaving this for too long or messing around with it too much, because these knots are only single knots each and they will come undone if you mess too much with it, but they do hold nicely just while you need to finish off the braid here. So there we go. So now I have all these cords ready. So what we need to do now is finish off the ends. So this is what the braid looks like up close then. And you can see you get this nice leopard print pattern all the way around, so it doesn't matter how you wear it either. So on this end, like I said, we have to finish off the ends, and here I'm just going to take off the wire and then that's ready to put inside the Kumihimo ends. Here what I'm going to do is put some glue around all these knots, just right around where the cords are coming out, and then let that dry for a bit. Cut off the excess right down to the knots themselves, and then obviously they shouldn't come undone because you put glue on. Then that end will be ready, and then I'm going to take my Kumihimo ends here and then finish off the actual ends and use the loops obviously to then attach my findings. So I already have a tutorial that shows how to do that in more detail, so you can go and have a look, and that is going to be a link for that down in the description box below. And then otherwise finish off the ends and then you'll have your finished braid. So now that I've finished off the ends of my braid here, and I've also attached my clasp and extended chain, then it looks a little something like this. And then obviously you just use a clasp here to then fasten it up and it's ready to wear. This is what it looks like. So you get this really nice leopard print pattern and you can wear it however you want to. So you don't have to worry about one side pointing outwards or inwards, because it looks like this. So that's the one with these colours here, and then I also did this one with the snow leopard colours. I really wanted to do that. I thought it'd be kind of a cool look with the exact same pattern, and it looks like that. So you can really get loads of different looks here, and also be fun to play around with all different colours instead of these kind of more realistic colours, but actually use maybe blue tones or purple tones or something like that to achieve the same pattern. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello everyone. In today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this Kisses beaded Kumihimo bracelet, and it looks like this. So these are all your X's going all the way around, representing your kisses, making it very Valentine's if you want to use it for that. And then obviously the embellishment as well, and along the sides, and I chose to use red bicones to go with the Valentine's theme. You can also choose whatever materials that you want to use. So this is what it looks like, and it's got